Chief, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Let's jump right in. One of your main responsibilities is securing the U.S.-Mexico border. What is the current state of that border, and what does the data show?
So, look, the operation control is the only acceptable response for us, right? We want to gain operational control. So, in the prior administration, the Border Patrol's resources were depleted. And so right now what we're trying to do is build back up our resources and our capabilities on the border. And so we're utilizing a whole of government approach. We're utilizing National Guard from Texas. We're utilizing DOD. We're using local law enforcement, county, state. We're using a true whole of government approach in order to get the level of deterrent that we've had, in addition to the executive orders and the removal of some policies and programs that were contradictory to border enforcement. And so what it looks like right now is we're moving in the right direction. We're moving well in the right direction, but it's going to take some time for the Border Patrol to have our resources built back up to where we can handle the border by ourselves.
How many people are crossing into the U.S. illegally now per day?
So the 7-day average right now is about 285 across the entire southwest border.
Which is a dramatic change.
It's down approximately 94% from this time last year, where it was almost 4,800 a day.
What do you think is driving that dramatic drop in illegal crossings?
So I think there's a lot of things driving it. One, we're getting agents back out to the line. When you actually have agents out on the river doing the job, performing law enforcement functions, it deserves a deterrent. Also, the cancellation of the CBP-1 app, like I talked about, right? Delivering consequences, right? The EO, the executive order, ending catch and release. So, you know, it's just like with any other law enforcement. The greater the deterrent, or the greater the punishment, the larger the deterrent. And so now there's a deterrent that says, why make this trip? Why put yourself in danger? Why make this long journey if you're going to be apprehended and turned around and sent back home? And so the strong law enforcement posture that we now have out there with our partners assisting us from the DOD to the Texas National Guard, we're being able to send a message that if you cross the border, your chances of being apprehended are much greater. And if you are apprehended, you're going to be removed from the country.
You mentioned the policy changes, Chief, under this administration. As we understand it, one of those policies is that if you cross the border illegally, you are essentially banned from claiming asylum and subject to being quickly deported. We understand that. But as you noted, the administration has also shut down CBP-1, which was an app that the previous administration used to allow people to basically get processed at ports of entry, to essentially request asylum at some later date. What is the legal way to seek asylum then now?
Okay, so first and foremost, the CBP-1 app had the exact opposite effect. What the CBP-1 app did was it encouraged people to make the dangerous journey to get to the border. When they got to the border and they could not receive an appointment or they did not want to wait for an appointment, then they just went across the river between the port of entries or across the border. Illegally. And so what it did was it created a pull factor that brought people to the border. If you remember, the CBP-1 app had a requirement that you had to be within so many miles of the actual border to actually even apply. And so what that did was that sent a message: pack up, risk everything to get to the border, then apply, and if you can get an appointment, so be it. If you can't, well, what are they going to do? They've spent everything and given up everything they had to get here, right? And so one of the things we've seen with the cancellation of the CBP-1 app, and you'll also see it in open source reporting and media, is that migrants are now choosing not to make that journey, and they're specifically saying, listen, CBP-1 app, we found out it's no longer valid, so we're not going to make that journey. And so what you'll see is a dramatic decrease in cross-border deaths. You'll see a dramatic decrease in drownings on the river. We've seen an actual huge decrease in deaths. So this isn't just about law enforcement, which is our concern, but it's also about the safety of the migrants. It's also about not encouraging illegal people to migrate to the border and then enter illegally and put themselves at risk or put themselves in the hands of smugglers.
But Chief, is there now a legal way, the right way to seek asylum now, or is that no longer an option at the border?
So at the border, right, crossing in between the ports of entry, which is what the Border Patrol focuses on, no, you do not cross the border illegally and then make an asylum claim. You can go to the port of entry or you can go to one of the embassies in your country and make your claim for asylum.
Just not at the border?
Not illegally after you enter the country illegally.
The administration has also been aggressively highlighting deportations to migrant home countries. How many deportations has the administration carried out since President Trump took office?
And so I can only speak to Border Patrol numbers. Okay. We're not the only agency that repatriates our deports. And so I'll have to get back with you on the exact number of deportations that the Border Patrol has been involved in, but it's a significant amount. I can tell you this, anyone that has crossed the border between the ports of entry since this administration has taken office has not been released. There have been 2 releases in the entire time, and both of those were released for a benefit to the United States government, meaning that they are material witnesses in criminal cases, and so they've been given a temporary status while they wait to testify in court.
You're saying only 2 people have been released from Border Patrol custody at the U.S.-Mexico border since President Trump took office.
Correct.
You mentioned the deportation. Some migrants are now being deported to countries where they're not from, like Panama and Costa Rica. How is the administration making sure these migrants are being treated humanely in those countries? And are you working on other deportation agreements with other third countries?
And so our position is that we will do everything to return a migrant to their home country, and that's what we're doing. So the U.S. Border Patrol works with any country to take their citizens back, as rightly they should take them back.
But what about countries like Panama? We have heard that African migrants and Asian migrants are now being sent to Panama, and that they allege that they are being mistreated, or at least detained without, any permission from them. How is the U.S. able to make sure that these migrants are treated in a humane manner?
And so I can tell you that when the U.S. Border Patrol is repatriating someone to the country, they're being treated in a humane manner. And we have standards and requirements and leadership that's monitoring to make sure that we're treating them right. This is not about an inhumane process. It's about a humane process. And I will state that the process that we have on the border right now is far more humane than record numbers of deaths that have happened over the previous 4 years.
And do you expect other third countries to accept deportees from the U.S.?
I expect that the U.S. Border Patrol will be more than willing to deport anyone back to their country of origin.
We know that some migrants are also now being transferred to Guantanamo Bay, the naval base there, as you know. What is the criteria for sending people there? How do you determine who gets sent there versus another place?
So, as has been said time and time again, it's the worst of the worst. It's convicted criminals, people with a criminal history, right, where we need the most secure location to place them, right. As you know, if we apprehend someone crossing the border illegally, we don't want to mix that economic migrant population and put them in the same facilities as a criminal migrant, right? And so we have to make sure that we're protecting the at-risk population.
But we do understand that in addition to criminals and suspected gang members, nonviolent detainees have also been sent to Guantanamo Bay. Is that accurate?
So I don't believe that's accurate.
You were just in Texas to see the Texas National Guard being deputized as immigration officers. You have talked about enlisting the help of state, local law enforcement to help the administration with its immigration plans. There are a lot of questions about how these state and local agencies will now oversee this new authority. Are we talking about the Texas National Guard arresting migrants, and do they have the training to do so?
So we're not talking about another organization overseeing it. The U.S. Border Patrol is overseeing anyone that we deputize, right? And so they will always be accompanied by a U.S. Border Patrol agent. So we're not going to have someone who's deputized out doing, whatever it is they feel like doing.
Without any Border Patrol
They're
support.
going to have guidance and leadership, and they must have the direction from the Border Patrol. They're acting under our authority, and we're directing them as to what they're going to do. And so in addition to that, they are receiving, they're receiving training. Right, they're receiving training and education, and not just policy, but also in what our policies are to ensure that when we're asking them to do something, they're complying with our policies.
But they can now legally arrest migrants.
Correct.
Your colleagues at ICE, another DHS agency, have now been charged with overseeing what the president has promised will be the largest deportation operation in American history. Given how low the numbers are at the U.S.-Mexico border, are your agents planning to support ICE in carrying out arrests in the interior, for example, of the country?
First and foremost, the job of the U.S. Border Patrol is to be on the border to prevent illegal entry. Our number one goal is to deter. If we do not deter them through presence or through consequence, then it is to make an arrest and decide what the person is amenable to under the law and put them into that process. If you look at the current immigration status, if you've got 1 million, right, people that have a deportation order, right, that ICE is trying to locate and deport, and we pull Border Patrol off of the border, right, we're leaving a hole, right? So the intent is to deport more people than are coming through, right? We're never going to be able to remove the illegal population from this country if we have more coming in. So right now, where it stands, it makes most operational sense for the U.S. Border Patrol to be at the border, controlling and preventing the flow of illegal immigration.
To stop the flow, if you will.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. So you don't foresee any assistance to ICE right now?
U.S. Border Patrol stands ready to assist any of our partner agencies where they need help. Our number one priority is to focus on the border, at the border.
As you know, Chief, cartels and human smugglers really oversee much of the illegal immigration that we see at the border. Now, President Trump has designated many of them, in Mexico at least, as foreign terrorist groups. How does that change how you are going after these cartels?
So I think it opens up our aperture. It gives us more authorities under the law. It gives us better intelligence that we can share. And so it takes away some of the limits that we may have if we're not targeting someone as a foreign terrorist organization.
As you know, historically, Border Patrol has struggled with morale issues. And it is no secret to you and many others that many Border Patrol agents were not happy with the previous administration's immigration policies. Is that changing at all now?
So I'll tell you that the morale of the Border Patrol is going up daily. I've spent quite a bit of time in my first month on the job down on the border, and I'm watching agents walk with their head held high. And I attribute a big part of that to agents just being allowed to do their job. When you are hired and trained to be a law enforcement officer to enforce laws, and you're not allowed to do that, right, it's going to affect morale. But I can tell you that from talking to agents daily, from going out to the line and spending time with agents, the morale is continuing to increase, and I contribute it to agents being allowed to do the job they were trained to do.
As you know, the administration, and specifically DOJ, have been making some significant cuts to other federal agencies in terms of funding and the workforce. Is that affecting your agency too, Border Patrol?
So it has not, and Border Patrol is not. We're not staffed at our congressional mandate of staff. We're actually below. As I talked about earlier, we saw not only a retention problem, but a recruiting problem during the last 4 years. We had some of the largest numbers of agents leaving to go to other agencies. We also had some of the largest numbers of agents opting for early retirement. And so we are well below our congressional mandate. We are working hard. I can also tell you that last month we set a record for our recruitment goal of over 9,000 applicants that applied to come into the Border Patrol. I think that as the public is starting to see that Border Patrol agents are actually out doing Border Patrol work, I think that's going to help our recruiting. I welcome DOJ coming in and looking at any area where we may need some efficiencies addressed. But
including at Border Patrol.
Including at Border Patrol. Anywhere in the Border Patrol. However, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised to see that this agency has been resource depleted for at least the last 4 years, and I'm hoping that they will also see that we need a lot of resources to get us back up to where we can run the border on our own without needing all of these other government agencies. But right now, we could not survive without the assistance of all the partners that are coming to our aid.
So you don't expect any cuts by DOJ to Border Patrol?
You know, it'd be very very difficult for me to say what DOJ would or wouldn't do, but I can tell you that I would be surprised if DOJ felt that the U.S. Border Patrol was properly staffed.
There's no question, Chief, that U.S. border policy right now is as strict as it has been for a while. We agree on that. Do you think that could potentially lead to an increase in migrants traveling through more remote and dangerous parts of the country to avoid being detected because they know they're likely now going to be deported or potentially being smuggled in tractor trailers? You know how dangerous that could be. Are you concerned about that?
So I believe as long as America is the greatest country in the world, and I truly believe that, people are always going to try to enter the country. I would encourage them to do it legally, right? But the fact is, our goal is to detect, like I said earlier, operational control, to detect and apprehend anyone that would come into the country illegally, right, and process them for removal if they've entered the country illegally. And Border Patrol has and always will be an agency that puts life and protection of life at our high priority, right? We may be in law enforcement, but we are humans, we have humanity, and we're going to, focus on ensuring that we protect our border, but we're going to do it in the most humane way possible.
Chief, is there anything I did not ask you that you wanted to underscore?
I just want to underscore that the morale of the agents. I think that when you have a president who is showing how strongly he backs those agents, that is a huge increase on morale. And we've got a tough as nails secretary and DHS Secretary Nome, and just the leadership of both those individuals has had a huge input on morale, or a boost in morale. And I think it's really important to know that the agents truly believe that this administration and that our leaders have their back. And I think that's a huge contribution to the morale
Chief, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.